Hey guys, it's Frank with Anabolic Outlaws, and today I just want to talk about how much the industry and the subculture, from what I can see, has changed from 10, 15 years ago versus today, all right? One of the major things I would definitely, obviously, talk about would be social media. It's funny, but back in the day, I remember watching like bodybuilding. There was like bodybuilding shows and World's Strongest Man and shit like that. I used to sit there on like Saturday morning. I'm sitting there, with my dad or whatever, and you could see like, some of the guys from the 90s up there like, holy shit, dude, like this guy's in phenomenal shape. And they'd have like a Metrix commercial or something with, who was that guy? Kazmier's over there doing T-bar rows or whatever. But like, besides that, it would be on like that channel USA. You guys remember that channel USA or whatever the fuck it was? And they'd play all like the freaking like risque movies at night when you were a kid or whatever, and you'd stay up with your buddies. You guys all know what I'm talking about. But they used to have that on. I remember occasionally they'd have that shit on like on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. And I remember sitting there and I was like, fuck, you know what I mean? I wish they had more of this. But what's funny is, now that social media is out, all you got to do is just fire up YouTube and you can pull up anything you want and you can watch it anytime you want, which is awesome. But back 10, 15 years ago, they didn't have that. And that was really the only time you'd be able to sit there and watch the guys on stage compete or whatever the case may be. And what's one of the major things that I've noticed was it wasn't quite as cool back then as it is now. It seems like you see a lot of guys, they're in there, they're rocking their basketball shorts and their sleeve monster shirts. You got kids in there like 12, 13 years old. They got their pre-workout. They went over to freaking GNC. They got their creatine. They did 3 scoops instead of 1, or you know what I mean. Whatever the case may be, they're in there trying to get involved, and that's great and everything like that. But you really didn't see that shit back in the day. I didn't notice it anyways, like back when I was like 15, 16 years old. There was a select few people that would actually take the time to get in there and try to build themselves up. More times than not, it'd be like a football player, or maybe there'd be like one kid that stood out that like maybe his dad was telling him like how to diet or whatever, and he looked way better than everybody else just because he knew what the fuck he was eating. We're all eating French fries and public school hamburgers. He's over there like counting out his macros, because a lot of that information wasn't as readily available as it is today. Nowadays, you see, you see a lot of kids out there. Seems like everyone's trying to get into it. The gyms are packed with younger kids, more so now than I noticed back then. Another thing that I want to touch base on is the whole like dark part of bodybuilding, the whole, performance enhancers. Like the stigma behind that shit 15 years ago was way different than it is now. I remember there had I guess there was a guy, I don't know if they made this story up to sell newspapers or whatever the case may be, but they had a guy and he fucking like was apparently had a roid rage and was flipping over cars in A1A where I live in, I guess it's like Central Florida on the beach. And it took 4 cops to arrest him. It took, they tased him and he pulled the freaking tasers out. He's like, I want more. This was according to the story that was written, and only now knowing that story was written obviously to sell newspapers, because when you throw a bodybuilder in the mix, obviously performance enhancers follow, and then it's like this great story because it's like taboo, no one really knows much about it, and it sells newspapers. So they always inflate what really happened. Another case in point of this happening is, I want to say it was about, I was still at the power plant, so it was like 8 years ago. They had this guy out in California, and I guess he was like, the paper said bodybuilder attack. I guess he fell asleep in front of some people's house. He woke up when the people came home, and I guess he got into a physical confrontation with the owner of the house or whatever, and the cops came and all this kind of stuff, and they took a cattle prod to take him down. They hit him with a car, and they were saying he was throwing manhole covers around and stuff, and obviously they were trying to emphasize, or they were trying to implement and suggest that he was on performance enhancers. Come to find out, the guy was like half retarded or something like that, overweight, and he wasn't this big bodybuilding guy that the media portrayed him to be. Again, that's another case in point of the media trying to sell newspapers and use that stigma in order to try to make money. I get it, I understand it. You know, they need people engaged in the newspapers, and that's what's going to sell the story. Another thing that I've noticed about today is obviously people are a lot more open about the performance enhancers. You see all these guys on YouTube, who I'm not going to name, who like to go up there and talk about performance enhancers. It's like the cat's out of the bag, obviously, with that. Everyone knows that's the reality of the situation, at least most people. It seems like the older generation is still kind of blind to it because they seem to be the experts. I'm talking about like the older generations, like people like my parents' age. Like they seem to know everything about it, but yet they don't know jack shit, but they pretend like they do. I guess that's still that stigma that was, you know, from 15 years ago that's kind of carried with them. But now, for the most part, most people know the reality about the situation, and it just seems like a lot more people are now engaged in fitness just because of social media. People are definitely using that in order to market themselves, which is great, which a lot of the doors would be shut 10, 15 years ago without social media. So in a way, it's a good thing. But it's kind of funny how the personification behind looking at somebody who obviously takes performance enhancers, who does have that extreme look, is definitely different now than it used to be. Because back beforehand, everyone was just kind of like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Who the fuck, what's this guy on? And then nowadays, it's kind of like, okay, you know, they just kind of point their fingers, and it's not quite as crazy as it was 10, 15 years ago, just because for some reason you see more of it because you're able to access it through social media. So if you guys have any questions or anything in regards to Anabolic Outlaws, we're always looking for people to be a part of the company. We'd love to be able to have you engage with our company, and we're always looking to be able to bring people in, take you under our wing, and help promote you as an athlete. So if you are interested in being a part of the company, please feel free to message us at the support section of the website, support@anabolicoutlaws.com. Have a good one, guys. Later.